joke. I always say, like, when I'm pitching, like, what are the first three letters of the word fundraising spell? They spell fun, okay? So if you don't make it fun for yourself, like make it interesting, make it dynamic, like, you know, you're gonna hate it, okay? Because you're gonna be on a treadmill, you know? When I look back at my career, I've raised more than $30 million in films over the arc of my career. And sometimes when I even do that math, I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? And I did that in all kinds of interesting and dynamic ways. And I failed a lot along the way, okay? But anyway, let's, financing 101. So for those of you who are on the documentary side of the business, you typically need to operate as a 501c3 nonprofit if you really want to fundraise successfully. So you probably get a fiscal sponsor. Is this sounding familiar to people? I get relatively, right? There are many good fiscal sponsors out there, and they allow you to operate as a legitimate nonprofit or charity in the United States, and you can take donations. You can also funnel your grant funds through that. It's a wonderful way to raise money for a film when that's a good fit. You know, if you have a cause that your film is about, you want to give your donors a chance to support you, right, in a way that is much like a charity, right? Now, how do you differentiate your charitable endeavor as a filmmaker from, like, funding the homeless or funding COVID or funding more urgent things? Well, welcome to that, right? We have to make a case for our life and work as filmmakers that we actually add value to the culture and we add value to the society in ways that we should command funding just like every other urgent cause out there, right? If we don't make movies about COVID, if we don't make movies about homelessness, if we don't make movies about HIV and AIDS or LGBTQ rights or whatever your cause is, like, how can we move these situations forward as a culture, right? So understanding that there's a pitch there that is not for profit, a charity, right? I could walk you through, incredibly robust ways to do that. On my movie, The G Word, which I talked about earlier about giftedness, I have created and monetized a whole partnership community of nonprofits around the world that are actually paying to support the film while we're making it. It's been a hugely beautiful experience. They see the films they want to support. They pay anywhere from $250 to $5,000 to join the network, and we've raised more than $80,000, and that's significant money to kind of keep the lights on for a documentary when you're trying to keep it moving forward, right? So the not-for-profit side, there's also diverse ways to do that. I have crowdfunded 14 times, okay? And only failed once on Kickstarter, and that was painful, right? So some films and filmmakers want me to crowdfund, and I can tell how ready they are. And I'm like, you're going on Indiegogo where there's no, where there's no pressure. There's always pressure, right? I have films where we're on crowdfunding because we got to a festival and we need to raise $30,000 to deliver the movie for a festival. And that's a very stressful thing to do, but you look at the reality of what do I have to fundraise, how fast, what's the way to get there. On the scripted side, it's much more complicated, okay? And that's where a lot of people kind of start to gloss over, and sort of, there's not a specific roadmap, but let's say you wanted to finance a film using private equity investors, okay? So first thing you need to do is you need to form some sort of vehicle, company, that can actually take investment, right? So that's often an LLC, and I've been a filmmaker who actually manages too many LLCs, so some years ago I pivoted into having a corporation. So depending on where you are in your journey, you might look at the corporation solution as a way to funnel money into a film, but sometimes an LLC is more than enough, okay? And an LLC will protect you as an individual, and it will also be a legal entity that can take private investment, okay? Then you decide how much you want to raise by way of private equity, okay? So I don't make micro-budget scripted features, because I'm too old for that. But let's say you wanted to make a movie that was a $500,000 budget, okay? That's a movie I might make, okay? And you decided that you wanted to raise $200,000 of that money through private equity, okay? So what you would do is you would work with your attorney to create investor documents. We call it a private offering, and you would structure your raise, $200K, in the context of shares, right? Maybe it's 10 shares of $20,000, okay? And then you have to be able to find people who want to absorb the risk and jump on your movie at the 20K level, right? And actually invest in it, right? Well, what's going to incentivize them, to do that? Well, On the back end of making the movie, they typically need two things. They need what we call a premium, okay, and they need what we call a relationship to net profits, okay. And so, for example, if someone has invested 20K, and they're always first dollar in, first dollar paid, right? So, and they get paid back pari passu, meaning everybody gets paid the same amount of the same schedule once we're earning money back, right? So, and your investors, came on like through your development raise, your pre-production raise, and they just jumped on early. So that's why the premium is so important. You need that for them to say yes. So for every dollar that they get paid back, they then get another 20% before the film reaches its net profit threshold. People following me on this? Yeah. And then you maybe split the net profits with your investors, 50% to the producers or the LLC, 50% to them, right? Shared pari passu, shared in pro rata as the film makes income. What you do when you're trying to think of a movie as an enterprise that makes money is you see it as a pie, okay? And there are different ways to cut up the pizza, if you will. And there's different ways to compensate people who are involved in bringing the movie to the screen, okay? So on the producer side of the producer's unit, right, let's say there's no money in the bank, right? Well, equity, giving points on a film, if you've heard that strategy, is a way to compensate people. That's the 50% that you maybe saved over here that you're not giving to your investors, right? So, I really want this DP, I really want this actor, I'm gonna give them points, right? As well as maybe their low budget SAG rate, because they love the script, they wanna be involved, and so that they need a little extra something for their agent to be comfortable with them saying yes, or something of that nature, right? And then, also if you're thinking about people on the producer side of your movie, like obviously it's a best case scenario when producers have a salary, right, and are being paid a line item out of the budget, but there are ways to compensate people with credits on film, with relationship to the LLC. It could be a multi-member LLC where they're vested in that. They could have a relationship to the film's net profits. There's lots of different ways for people to kind of be a part of that pie. And typically though, what you want is until the movie warrants giving over any rights, like assigning a territory like the United States to a distributor, you don't want to do that unless you really need to do that. Because the movies that have the most value are typically the ones where the producers retain all the rights. And they go to festivals and they sell them, and then you hear about those deals in the trades, right? So if you are in a situation where you have to sell off rights, which I do a lot because I'm trying to get my movies made and no one's giving us the money, so we resell territories, right? Your film is kind of less attractive to Netflix, by the time it premieres, right? So I have to consult my filmmakers sometimes and say, you know what? We don't have enough money for post-production. We have to think differently about what this movie is doing right now. You gotta get it made and get it out in public before you can sort of say it's done, right? So you make those tough choices. Sometimes that's when I involve a sales agent, and if a film commands it, like for example, I produced a film about Pierre Cardin, who's a famous French fashion designer. He passed like not a year and a half after our film came out. And we were, believe it or not, we were having trouble raising money for that movie. I mean, as famous as he is, right? And so we had a very strong sales agent that was selling our film with us territory by territory, right? So we sold Japan, we sold Australia, we sold France, and those bits and bobs of money, not only they help fund production, they help allow for other kinds of financing to be leveraged as you're finishing your film.